Hey guys, in this session we're going to be looking at the level 1 graphs paper from 2015. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so with the first question, what I would recommend you to do is just pause somewhere around this point and actually just read through the question, and then I'll actually start working through the rest of it in the next slide. Okay, so hopefully you've paused and had a chance to actually read through the question, but basically I'm going to actually go into the next slide, which is the actual question, what they're asking you to do in this, for this question anyway. Okay, so part 1 of this question, they're asking you to show how the area of the pond covered by the plant changes with time. So all you're really doing is you are just plotting x against y. So you're just literally pointing the graph. So my first point here is going to be at when d is 3, area covered is by 4. So just going to roughly put it there. When it's 4, it's at 8. So roughly there. When it's 5, it's at 16. At 6, it's at 32. At 7, it's at 64. Oops, let's try that again. And then at 8, it's at 128. Okay, so what we're looking for is a graph that's actually beginning at 3, 4 and going all the way to 828. Now this graph has to be a smooth graph. It's a bit difficult to draw this graph on a tablet, but there we go. That's the best attempt I could do. So for achieved folks, basically you need to have a correct curve drawn using discrete points. So when I say discrete points, you could just have those blue crosses there, or you could have a continuous curve. And this is what you need to do for this particular question to get an achieved grade. Or I really should say this is, well, yeah, it is an achieved question, but it's classified as U. But no, we're just going to put that as an achieved grade. Okay, next question. Okay, so with this question, you basically say the plant followed the same pattern of the growth from the time when it was first noticed. What area of the pond was covered by the plant when it was first noticed? So just have a look at the table. You can see that the numbers are actually being halved. So half of 8 is 4, half of 4 is going to be 2, half of 2 is 1. So I guess the first thing you can really answer is that what area of the pond was covered when it was first noticed? It's going to be 1 meter squared. Which just translates to 2 days. So 2 days before he started measuring. There was already a patch of plant there. There was already 1 meter squared of plant. Okay, so for this question, it looks like you can get the highest grade you get as a merit. You get an achieved if you had just mentioned the value, and valid interpretation of the answer given as a merit. So obviously you're looking at a merit if you were to actually do this, which is basically write the reasoning behind it. Okay, so let's go on to the next question. All right, so with the third question, you've been asked to give the equation that describes the area of the plant. So we already knew from the previous question that this was 2 and this was 1 here. Now what I'm going to do is I can actually have a look at all of these numbers, and I see that they're all doubling. So because they're doubling, I know that this is, I'm going to be looking at an exponential curve. All right, because if you have a look at it, this is 1 times 2 is 2, 2 times 2 is 4, 4 times 2 is 8. So I'm looking for some sort of exponential curve where a is equal to 2 to the power of something. Okay, let me just put this as something. Now I need to figure out what that something is. So what I can do is I look at the numbers, and I know that 1 could be written as 2 to the power of 0. 2 could be written as 2 to the power of 1. 4 could be written as 2 to the power of 2. 8 could be written as 2 to the power of 3. So what I need to do is I need to figure out a pattern between this number and the power itself. And what you should be able to, what you should see is that the power is actually 1 less than whatever d is. So that means I could write this formula as a equals to 2 to the power of d minus 1. That something is going to be d minus 1. That's one way of writing this equation. The other way you could have also done it is, let me just see. So say for example, the other way you could have done it is if d and a, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Now a in this case is what we can see is what's 1, 2, 4, and 8. But the other way you could have done it is if you put 2 to the power of 1, you actually get 2. 2 to the power of 2 is equal to 4. 2 to the power of 3 equals to 8. So what you can see is that this is actually half of whatever this number here is. So half of 2 is 1, half of 4 is 2. So that means another way you could write this equation would be a equals 0.5 multiplied by 2 to the power of d. Okay, so there's two ways you can actually write this. Now, I'm going to go a little bit more, and I'm going to show you how how this equation and this equation is the same thing. So say if I have a is equal to 2d minus 1, then according to my using algebra, I could write this as 2d multiplied by 2 to the power of negative 1, and then a is equal to 2d multiplied by, because it has a negative index, I can bring it to the denominator. It'll become positive 1, and then I can have a is equal to 2 to the power of d multiplied by a half, which is 0.5. And what you should see is that these two equations are the same. Okay, so what do you get for achieve merit and excellence? If you get the final equation, which is this or this, you are looking at an excellence, and I think you would get a merit had you written a is equal to 2d, you are looking at a merit. Okay, that's this question. Let's go to the next one. All right, so in this question, it basically says, if no intervention takes place, on which day will Hank first measure the area of the plant to be more than 500 square meters? So if I was to write this as an equation, I mean, if you had solved the equation in the previous question, you could have written this. You could have said a is equal to 2 to the power of d minus 1, and you're looking for more than 500, so 500, 2d minus 1 greater than 500. All right, now that's one way of doing it. The other way of doing it is actually looking at your table. Now you see how you got 64, 128? I could just carry it on. So if I make this 9, then this would become 256. Then the 10th one would be 512. So I guess if you read the question, it says, which day will Hank first measure the area to be more than 500 meters? Then you can see that that's the answer that you're looking for is actually 10 days. Okay, so I mean, you can write it like this and then you can actually solve it. But remember, I mean, you can do it much faster way by just looking at the table and actually solving it. And this question here will be an achieved. Okay, off we go to the next one. Okay, so for this question here, right at the bottom there, it's asking you what is the equation for the area covered by the plant as shown in the graph. So, I mean, if you have a graphics calculator, then you know that you only need 2 points to actually create an equation. The first point is the key one, is this one here, when it says from day 8 when it covers 128 meters squared. So here we can put this as 8, 128. And you need to choose another point. Now, looking at all these other points here, you're not really sure where they're going to be, except for this one here when it's at 0. So this one here, we can put it as 13 and 0. Okay, so those are your 2 points. And once you have these 2 points, you can put in a graphics calculator and it's going to give you an equation. Now, let's say you're not one of those people that doesn't have a graphics calculator and you want to try and figure out this equation. So remember that the equation that you're going to have is going to be in the format of y equals mx plus c. Now to figure out the gradient, which is rise, which is on this side here, over run. Now if you look at how much it's actually risen, but it's actually not risen because the graph is a negative one, so it's actually going down, and so your gradient is going to be negative 128 over 13 minus 8, that's going to be 5. So that's what your gradient is. So your equation is going to look like this. Y is equal to, now I'm going to simplify this as negative 25.6 x plus c. Now you still got to figure out what c is. And I guess the way you do that is pick a number that's actually really easy to work with. So let's see, we're going to use 13 and 0. All right, so we're going to use the points 13 and 0, which means I can write this as 0 equals negative 25.6 multiplied by 13 plus c. And if I rearrange this, I'm going to get c equals to 332.8, which means my equation is y equals minus 25.6 x plus 332.8. So really important, I guess one thing you need to understand is that we don't really have y and x. What we do have is we've got a and we've got d. So we just need to make sure we write that as a equals minus 25.6 d plus 322.8. Okay, so in terms of grades, you need to get the equation correct to get a merit. Now achieved could be either getting the c value or the gradient itself. All right, that's it for this question. Next one. So with this question, they've actually asked you what's unrealistic about this graph. Write at least 2 comments with justification. Now, I mean, there's a lot you can do here in terms of making comments. So it's kind of like open to discussion, really. The first thing I'm going to point out is that these guys that are removing the plants, they're actually removing it in a straight line. Now, what that tells me is that the first point is that they might not remove exactly the same amount every day. I mean, it's pretty accurate. You've got to be to pick out the same amount of plant every day. And one of the second bullet points that they actually mentioned in the schedule was the fact that, you know, plants do grow back. So especially with this plant, if you look at day 7 to day 8, it grew exponentially. So plants actually go, I shouldn't say grow back, not go back. The plants grow back and it would be bigger. So they're actually assuming that the plant is not going to grow after day 8. So that's another thing you can actually point out as well. So there's a really weird question, because I mean, a couple of points you mentioned, you're actually looking at an excellence grade, but if you just talk about the gradient itself, you're probably looking at an achieved grade. All right, so let's move on. Back to more gardening again. So question number 2, what do we got here? Graph is shown. How much area is the plant covering each day? So all they're asking you is how much area is increasing per, how much is the area increasing per day? So if you have a look at it, it's starting at 20. After 1, it goes to 30. After 2, it goes to 40. So you're really looking at the gradient. So in this case, you're just going to put down your answer as 10 meters squared. And that should get you an achieved grade. Okay, so in this question, they're asking what day will it be when the plant covers 200 square meters if the conditions remain the same. Now, unfortunately, our graph's only going up to 100, so we've got to try and figure out when it's going to be 200. So first thing we want to really be doing is write the equation of this graph. So we know that the gradient was 10 from the previous question, so we can write that as 10d. And also we can see that the y-intercept here is at 20. So we could write the equation as a is equal to 10d plus 20. So if we want to try and figure out when it equals to 200, so we put down 200 equals 10d plus 20. Rearranging this, I'm going to get 180 equals 10d, and d equals 180 divided by 10, which means d equals to 18 days. So it'll take 18 days for it to cover 200 square meters. So grades wise, just a correct response without any working is going to get you an achieved. But if you show this working, you are looking at a merit here. All right, next question. So guys, with this question, obviously after 7 days, the plant stays, the area covered by the plant stays the same for day 8 and day 9. So we're looking at this part here and it stays the same. And they want to write, they're asking you for the equation for this new section. So basically they're asking you the equation for that section. Now we know that when we have a flat line like this, especially the one that goes horizontal, we can just write y equals to whatever that value is. So in this case, the value is 90 and we're not working with y. So we're going to put a is equal to 90. All right, that's the equation for this. On to the next part of this question. They're asking you, what does this section of the graph mean? So a couple of things you can actually point out is the first point is that the amount of plant is staying the same. Is staying the same. And the second point you could make is rate of removal, because remember these guys are actually removing the plants as well. So the rate of removal is keeping pace with the growth. Okay, so basically for this question, it looks like if you make an equation and make one bullet point, you will be looking at a merit. But if you just did the equation, you were looking at an achieved. Okay, next question. Right, so we got a couple of more friends that are coming to help. Now the area covered by the plant decreases by 15 square meters. So they're asking you to draw a graph on the grid above to show the area. So basically what it's saying is that the graph is decreasing by 15 now. So from 90, we're going to go to 75. And from 75, we're going to go to 60. I'm just going to double myself there. So we got 30 and then all the way to 0. So really, you should have a lovely straight... Ooh, that's not good. Let's try that again. Should have a lovely straight line going through there. Now, wow, made so many mistakes. Let's try it again. Sorry guys, I don't actually have access to my ruler here, so that's the best I can do. But hopefully when you do this, please don't do this freehand. Use your ruler and actually draw a straight line for that. And make sure it actually goes through those points, like my one here. Okay, so basically for this line here, you're looking at a grade of an achieved. But like I said, this particular line that I've drawn here would probably get me a not achieved. All right, so that's part 1. Part 2 is on what day will there be no plant left. So I'm looking at part 2 now. So that means I'm looking at when it equals to 0. And you can see that it equals to 0 when it's day 15. So I'll just write in day 15 for part 2, and that should get you an achieved grade as well. So a couple of nice easy achieved questions here. Okay, so let's go to the next one. All right, so what they've done is they've actually given you equation for the line from day 9 onwards. All right, and they actually tell you that day 9 onwards the equation is equal to a is 225 minus 15d. Now what the question says is that if Hank's 2 friends had come on day 8, what would the equation of this line have been? All right, so let's just have a look at that. I'm just going to draw a rough graph here, guys, so you can kind of get an idea. So let's see. When it was day 9, all right, when it was day 9, Hank's friend had arrived and actually started helping him out. So now hold on, let me get that right again. Basically, Hank's friends came on the 10th day, right? So they came out on the 10th day and actually helped him out from day 10 onwards. And so when it was the 9th day, it was 9 and 90. And on the 10th day, it started reducing by 15. So on the 10th day, it was down to, what was this point going to be? 1075. Okay, so they actually arrived on the Hank's friends. So this is where Hank's friends arrived on 10th day. Now what the equation, this blue equation is for this particular graph. All right. But what they're saying is that if Hank's friends had come on day 8, okay, if they had come on day 8, then what would the equation of this line be? So day 8 means this entire graph has to shift 2 days back. So if Hank's mates came on the 10th day, if they had arrived on the 8th day, then there would have been 75 square meters left, which means they wouldn't have come on the 8th day. Sorry, they would have come on the 8th day, and then the 9th day it's going to go almost parallel. So if it's at 75, then it's going to be at, so on the 9th day they would have gone down to 60. So on the 9th day they would have gone down to 60, which means your new graph is going to have 2 points like this, where one point is 960 and the other point is 875. So it's actually shifted 2 days across. That's what this whole moving across means. Like, so now that you've got these 2 points, you can put in the graphics calculator and actually get your equation. Or if you understand that to shift a line to the right side, all you needed to do is just add 2 to the variable on the x-axis. So in other words, you can write this as a equals to 225 minus 15, and that would just become d plus 2. And that d plus 2 would have actually shifted the blue line into the orange line. That's what it means. So yeah, I mean, and you can actually leave your answer like that, and you are looking at in terms of providing equation, and you need to explain why you did that rationale, like why you moved it 2 points, 2 shifted 2 days across, and then you would get an excellence for it. If you just put the equation, you are looking at a merit just for the equation, and there is an achieved grade, but if you make mistake with one of the original equations, you get an achieved. So really important thing is, I guess I forgot to mention this, you've got to explain your reasoning to get an excellence. All right, so, and I guess what you'll do is you can actually just write a statement to say that if Hank's mates arrive on the 10th day, they would have still got 75 meters squared left, but if they'd arrived on the 8th at 75 meters squared, so your graph has to shift 2 days to the left. That's how you explain it. So graph shifts 2 days to the left, and there's your reasoning. All right, let's go to the next question. All right, so folks, this question here, you've been asked to find out what the equation of this graph is. Now, if you have a graphics calculator, just take in 3 points. All right, put those 3 points in and you're going to get your answer. Okay, and I believe this is an excellence question with 8 points, so it's probably a good reason to actually have a graphics calculator. But if not, you can do it another way, and I'm actually going to show you using the vertex form. So I'm going to be looking at particularly this point here, which happens to be 785.3. So I know that my equation is going to look like this: y equals to a multiplied by x minus 7 squared plus 85.33. All right, so that's basically looking at where the equation is, and I'm actually giving that out. Now, one of the ways that I've kind of figured this a value real quickly is, I don't know how many people will accept with it, but I know that I've kind of used this quite a bit, is you choose your vertex and then choose another point that you can work with. So I'm going to choose these 2 points here. I'm going to choose the vertex, and I'm going to choose this point right here. And what I'm going to do is that I'm going to measure the distance from here up to the top, which is 85.33, and the distance from 7 to 15, which happens to be 8. So one of the things that I've kind of played around with, and I find that, you know, a value, you can write it as, oh, I don't actually want to do this. I mean, if you are in my class, I can actually prove it, but unfortunately, for those of you that are watching it, yeah, this only works if you choose the vertex and another point, where you can actually say a is rise over run squared. So my equation, I could write it as rise in this case is 85.33 divided by run squared, which happens to be 8 squared. All right, and because it's a negative parabola, I just put a little negative symbol there, and that's going to be x minus 7 squared plus 85.33. So what else do I need? I mean, you could, instead of y and x, just remember to put your right variables. So you're going to have a equals negative 85.33 over 8 squared, x minus 7 squared plus 85.33. And that's basically it, guys. You can leave your answer like that, and I think you'd be looking at an excellence grade with that one. Now, just another point, if you're using the graphics calculator, is look at these numbers here. I'd actually choose like really good numbers to work with. When I say good numbers, I'm saying pick this one here, 0, 20, pick 252 and 364, because the 37.33, you don't know if it's a recurring decimal or not. So picking like nice numbers to work with means your graph is going to be, your graphics calculator is going to give the equation a lot more accurate. Okay, that's it for this question, guys. We'll go to the next one. Okay, so with this question, the very first thing I'm really going to do is I'm going to start filling up this table, just so things will make sense a little bit, all right? So I'm looking at, we've got Jody's number there, and then A is x plus 1. So that's pretty easy to fill up. So that number there is going to be 5. Now B is x minus 4. So I've got 0 take away 4 is negative 4, negative 3, negative 2, that's going to be negative 1, and 4 minus 4 is 0. Now I've got A times B. So which is basically these two numbers multiplied each other, and 3 times negative 2 is negative 6, 4 times negative 1 is negative 4, and 5 times 0 is 0. Okay, now there's no real, what do you call it, marks for this, because I haven't really answered any questions. I've just filled up this table myself. Okay, so going to the actual question, it's asking you to draw the graph of y against x, use the set of axes below. Now we've got the points, just in case you've forgotten. Well, I should have really copied that table, but I'm just going to write it down here. I think it was x and y. So we had 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4, negative 4, negative 6, negative 6, negative 4, and 0. So basically plot this points against this particular graph. Okay, so when it's 0, we've got negative 4. When it's 1, we've got negative 6. When it's 2, we've got negative 6. When it's 3, it's negative 4. And at 4, it's 0. Now, I always tell people this, you know, just because you plot points doesn't mean you join them straight away. Now, think about this question. This question here, the question actually said Jody's actually thinking of a number, right? Let me just have a look at that question again. And she thinks of an integer, which means you're not going to get a number that's like 0.5, 1.5, or anything like that. So please don't draw a curve, because if you draw a curve, you're only going to get an achieved. But leave it like this, and you will be looking at a merit. Okay, so always think about this. Before you start drawing a graph, is check the context of the question. Okay, it's really important. So in this case, leave it as it is, and you get a merit. If you join it, you're looking at an achieved. Now for the second part of the question, they're asking you what's the equation of this graph. So remember that these are the points that we were working with. We had 0, negative 4, 1 and negative 6, 2 and negative 6. Now if I was to do this graph, I mean, you can put these 4 or 5 points in the graphics calculator, and you can get an equation straight away. That's one way of doing it. If you don't have one, this is the other way you can do it. I look at, I see where the line of symmetry is, and I can see that it's at 1.5. Now, I can't figure out what the vertex in this case is because I don't actually have the a value. What I do have though is if it's symmetrical, I know that if it's -1, when x equals to -1, y is going to equals to 0. So from here, I can write this equation in the intercept form, where you have x minus xo, x minus x1. Now you might have different ways of writing this, folks, but I'm just going to use this one here. So then I can write this as y equals a times x plus 1 and x minus 4. Now I need to figure out what the value of a is. And to do that, I just need to pick a point that I need to work with. And I'm going to pick the point 0, -4. So I'm going to substitute it in. So -4 equals a times 0 plus 1 and 0 minus 4. So -4 equals a times 1 times -4. And I'll get a value of a equals to 1. So my equation for this graph is y equals to x plus 1 multiplied by x minus 4. And that gets you a merit. Okay, next question. So with this question, they're saying, explain how Jody's number can be found from the graph if the answer is 6. Okay, now let's say we have this graph and we are to carry it on. 1, 2. We know it's going to be a parabola, right? So we know that the graph is going to look something like this. Terrible parabola, but I hope you guys understand what I'm trying to do here. Okay, so how it can be found from the graph is you need to find out when the answer is 6. Now 6 is here, right? So if we draw a line when y is equal to 6, we are going to have roughly 2 points where they're actually equal to 6. Okay, so and what we can say is we can just plot it down to say that the graph, when she thinks of the number which is a 5 or a -2, when she thinks of 5 or -2, she actually gets an answer of 6. And again, you can say that this is because of symmetry, line of symmetry, that it actually works out both answers as well. Like you can see both answers. So in terms of explanation, guys, you actually need to explain that the solutions will be when the purple line equals 6, and this will happen when x equals to 5 and when x equals to -2. So you're going to have x equals 5 as one solution, x equals -2 as one solution as well. Okay, so what do you need? So just says for excellence, you need a clear explanation for why there are 2 solutions. So talk about the symmetrical, how parabola is symmetry. And even if you just show one answer and explained, you will be looking at an achieved. But the other way you could have done it also, you could have, because you had the equation, which is x plus 1 and x minus 4. This was the equation of the parabola. This equals to 6. So you could have expanded it, and you could have got x squared minus 4x plus x minus 4 equals 6. Factorize, simplify it. So x squared minus 3x minus 10 equals 0. So you have x minus 5 and x plus 2 equals to 0. Therefore, x is equal to 5 and -2. That's another way you could have shown how that 5 and -2 comes about as well. But as I said, this is a graphs paper, so really explaining it from the graph was quite important for you to get an excellence. Okay, next question. Okay, now it says, suppose Jody had said that a multiplied by b gives me -10. What does your graph tell you about the solution to this new problem? Now, you can have a look straight away. -10 is actually here. So there's no way that Jody actually had thought about, how do you say it? She can actually give a multiplied by b is going to be -10. It's actually not possible. All right, so in this one, you actually just say there are no real solutions because, the graph doesn't actually go down to -10, and that should get you a merit. So mentioning that there are no real solutions gets you a merit. Just mentioning it as impossible will get you an achieved. So not possible will get you an achieved. Okay, let's go to the next question. So with this question, Tom's thinking of a puzzle as he starts saying, think of a 2-digit number, multiply it by 4 and take away 100. What equations would you use to describe this relationship? So I'm thinking of a number, so maybe put at x is 2-digit number. And I can say y is equal to 4 times x minus 100. And that should get you an achieved. And the next question, draw the graph of this relationship on the axis below. Now remember the equation was y is equal to 4x minus 100, which means when x is equal to, you can create a table if you want. Just real quickly, I'm going to put x and then 4x minus 100, got 0, 20, 40, and 60. So at 0, it's going to be negative 100. At 20 times 4 is 80, so that's going to be negative 20. At 40 times 4 is 160, that's going to be 60. 60 times 40, that's going to be 140. Okay, and basically just plot those points. So at 0, it's going to be negative 100. At 20, it's going to be negative 20, somewhere there. At 40, it's going to be 60. At 60, it's going to be 140. And you should be able to draw this as a line. And I think when you draw this as a line, do you need to draw this as a line? Hang on, let me have a look at the question again. The question actually says, I'm thinking of a 2-digit number. So I'm wondering whether you need to actually draw from 10 onwards. But then you could also have, yeah, I think 10 onwards. But anyway, guys, really weird this question. They're just saying graph of y equals 4x minus 100 and drawn correctly gets you an achieved. So unfortunately, I'm not sure what they're truly expecting in this question. Okay, let's go to the next one. All right, so the first equation that we had was y is equal to 4x minus 100. Now, the second one, it says that I get the same as when I add 47 to it and then multiply the result by 1.12. So my second equation could be x plus 47 multiplied by 1.12. Now, you could potentially draw this second graph on that other graph and actually find out what the intersection is. But really, what you could also do is, because you could solve it simultaneously. So you could have just done 4x minus 100 equals 1.12 times x plus 47. So expanding it and rearranging, you're going to get 4x minus 100 equals 1.12x plus 47 times 1.12. 47 times 1.12, that's going to give you 52.64. So rearranging this, you're going to get 4x minus 1.12x equals 100 plus 52.64. So 4 minus 1.12 is 2.88x equals 152.64. So therefore, x is equal to 152.64 divided by 2.88, which is, let's see, 53. So then x is equal to 53. Now, if you had done it in the graph, it's really hard to look where that exact point is. So the best way to do this is by doing it algebraically. Or what you could have also done is you could have actually drawn these two graphs in your graphics calculator and find out what the intersection is and get the answer as 53. So getting the answer as 53 is going to get you an excellence. All right, guys, that's it for this exam paper. I do apologize for some of those vague answers and some of those excellence questions, but unfortunately, that is what the answer schedule is given, and that's what I've actually been working out of. Anyway, that's it for this session. Thank you for watching, and good luck with your exams.